This is the 18
right fucking now. The reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick. I'll say this right here on the fucking internet. I don't give a shit. People will sit there and go, oh, you can't say that. Yes, I can. A 19-year-old is more attractive than a 26-year-old woman, and I'll tell you why. Because that 26-year-old has talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been more places, been fucked and dumped more times, more arguments, more heartbreak, more bullshit, more mess for me to clean up. Whereas a 19-year-old might have had one guy from high school, just broke up, she's fresh, and I can fucking put my imprint on her and make her a good person, and without her having to go through all that detriment to learn about life.
So what's your key age range? 19 to...
It's not just about the age range.
Just the example.
So I know one thing we can stop here.
I mean,
one thing I will say where I think he is wrong here is I think that the vision of a 19-year-old who, oh, she's only been with one guy, that's not the case anymore. You've got 19-year-old women who have been around the block, more times than I have today as a 43-year-old. It's wild. The promiscuity has bled down to a very, very young age bracket. So, I came out of, I always tell my story, and I remember talking to Adam, and Adam saying, you're an outlier. You can't use you as an example. But I came out of college. I had been with one guy. One guy. That was my experience. That was important to me. That was what I prioritized. Talk to girls coming out of college now. Good luck finding a 19-year-old who has that same way. So I think his perception of a 19-year-old is actually not terribly accurate for this moment. But I think the larger point of saying that a woman is more attractive, the way I interpreted what he said is I said, okay, a woman is more attractive if she has been more selective, has had more self-respect, hasn't been around the block a million times, hasn't given away the goods too easily, and has saved herself for experiences that matter. Promiscuous women, modern feminists may not like that point, but that is a reality. And I think that for men, that is something. I know my husband has had that conversation with me many times, that he very much appreciates the way I chose to live my life. That was very valuable to him. So this is another example where immediately, and you know who gets offended, Rolo? I'll tell you, women who've slept with everybody on earth hear this and they're like, what is he saying about me? Take a moment and self-reflect. Yeah, he's talking to you, and he's probably right.
Yes. Well, he's right. And okay, so what he's really kind of dancing around is what I call the alpha widow dynamic. Okay. What that means is that women imprint upon the guy who is the most alpha dude that is in their the guys who they've had sex with in their notch count. Okay. So a girl, technically speaking, and I understand, I completely agree with you, because I've been on Fresh and Fit where I've been sitting next to 19-year-olds who have a 15 to 20 body count already at 19. And they are upfront and open with it all. So that's what they're saying. So I agree with you. However, I will say this is that we've had these episodes before. I've done them on my show. I've done them on Fresh and Fit, where we talk about the importance of women's promiscuity. Like why is promiscuity still important to guys today, even in this environment, even in today's society? Well, the alpha widow dynamic goes something like this: is the more men that a woman has been with over the course of her her sexual history, the more the more chance, so the greater the pool of guys who made that imprint upon her or have given her that baggage. So the more that woman has slept with those guys, the more just statistically speaking, the odds are, if she's got 10 or 20 in her backfield, one of those guys or three of those guys made an alpha impression upon her that the guy who's next in line is going to have to overcome, because he's got to out alpha the guy that is like sort of the ghost of alpha's past, right? And so that's the idea. So I always say this: it's not so much a numbers game as it is like an alpha impact game. So if you've got a woman who's got like 3 prior lovers, okay, and you got a girl who's got 10 prior lovers, but the girl with 3 had 1 or 2 of those guys who were just like the most alpha guy that just left her. She can't get over it. She pines for that guy. He's the one that got away, and you're the next one in line, and you've got to find some way to outclass the memory, the fantasy of that guy. Or would you rather be with the girl who has 10 and none of those guys really made all that big a deal, or were all that big an impact, or maybe they were betas, or maybe they were one night stands or whatever, and you're the guy who can very easily come in there and form a relationship with that woman because she doesn't have any real alphas in her backfield. So it's really an alpha impact game, and it's rather than a numbers game. However, odds are that if she's got 10, most likely one of those 10 is probably going to be the guy who's like, she just can't get over. That's what he's trying to describe here. But everybody, once they hear this, they say, oh, what's your age range? They want to turn him into like a pedophile. They want to turn him into a young, that's why we have this concept, by the way, of was half plus 7. Like you're not age appropriate. You're not with a woman who you should be with. You should be like a guy who's 30 should not be with an 18-year-old. A guy who's 40 should not be with a 28-year-old. Whatever the age range happens to be. You're still an adult. She's an adult. You're an adult. Right. So it's like you're consenting adults. So why would that make any difference? Well, it doesn't to guys, but it does for women because women age out of the sexual marketplace. And that's what rubs them the wrong way. Another unflattering truth about the differences between men and women that they're being reminded of. And it makes them feel bad at the end of that conversation.
So, from talking to me, we sat together and that I don't like promiscuity either way. I don't like it in women. I don't like it in men. I'm very deep into self-respect for your body. So I don't like flippant sex. That's just not something that I think really helps anyone long term. That's how I feel about it. But I'm curious your perspective. Do you feel, though, that you were talking about, different men who can make an imprint on a woman, for example, throughout the years? Do you feel that it could be the reverse as well? Like, could there be a guy then who dated or went out with, 10 women, 12 women and got hurt several times along the way, and now he's got all the baggage, and that becomes problematic for the woman in his life, as opposed to a guy who had been around the block less times, has less baggage? Does it work both ways in your mind?
I would say no, and I'll explain to you why. Because men do not place they don't place the degree of importance upon sex as women do. Simply because women's biological nature is to invest emotionally in the guy that she's having sex with on some level. If a woman doesn't do that, like say she works in the porn industry, she has to be trained and conditioned to sort of put her emotions on hold and say, this is just a sex act. I'm just doing something with my body. It's like sports, right? For men, that the reason why guys get addicted to pornography is because our innate sexual strategy is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And what provides that? Vicarious pornography. That's why it's free. That's why it's streaming. That's why it's 4K. Right. So when guys are thinking about sex, we can dissociate ourselves from the emotional connection that women innately evolved to have, because having sex in our evolutionary past meant that woman could possibly get pregnant. And if she did, that could be a death sentence. Even if she picked the right guy, she has to emotionally invest in him. That's why women have much more proclivity for like sexual revulsion. That's why they are very much more selective. That's why they are the quote unquote gatekeepers of sex, right? They have a filter for guys who are creeps. They have a filter for guys who are like the hot guy. The good opportunity is just as important as the guy who is the creep, who she just wants to simply stay away from. It's a neurological mechanism of women's psyches to invest more emotionally and personally in sex, because they're the ones with the higher reproductive cost. For men, it's the wind blows and we get a hard on, right? We have to hit it and quit. But what did John say? It was ejaculate and evacuate. And we had to do that because we had to be very efficient, opportunistic breeders in our evolutionary past. As a result, men do not have the same emotional investment into sex that women do. And so take that and fast forward that to 2022, where we're having this conversation right now. And do men not have like women that they pine for or think is their soulmate? Yeah. Until the next girl comes along and rocks their world in bed, or the next girl that comes around and she seems like she's someone that he wants to invest in. They do not pine for women or for their past partners if they do, in the same way that women do, because they have already created that emotional investment in the guy who is the best that she can do. So if it's like, oh, he's the best that I could, he's the one that got away. Even Katy Perry has like some song called The One That Got Away.
Yes.
Or if you look at like the end of Titanic, where Rose has the heart of, the diamond and everything. She's had this wonderful life from some, beta provider, but she still can't get over Jack, who's in the bottom of the ocean in an icy grave. And at the end of the movie, it's like she's reunited in death with that guy, not the guy who provided her this luxurious lifestyle and grandchildren and everything else. It's the dude that's at the bottom of the ocean. That's to the point where we're creating mythology and stories about that dynamic. So that's the difference between men and women when it comes to emotional investment in sex or otherwise.
Yeah, which I think is I remember going through a period in my life where I was looking at everyone around me and I said, God, it would be so much easier if I could just be like them. They were just kind of unattached, and they would go around and they would sleep with guys. And what I realized at some point is that they weren't doing it very well. It was weighing on them a lot. It wasn't their natural inclination to be that way. They were trying to fit into a paradigm that they thought also would be easier. And a lot of those women were very unhappy having these one night stands because it never felt like a one night stand. It felt like it was the one night stand where you hoped to get the text the next day. It was the one night stand where you wondered if he was going to call again. And that's just not the nature of a one night stand. Now you're wanting that one night stand to turn into some type of relationship. So I think it is, I think women and men are hardwired differently. I think that it's from my perspective, it's a very good thing when women and men come together in a monogamous relationship and make a commitment and decide to have a child and create a conventional family dynamic. That's just my opinion. That's what I've chosen.
I've said this in the past, is that like human beings are promiscuous by nature, but we are monogamous by necessity. Right. We have to be monogamous in order to parentally invest in our offspring, which are very fragile. That are going to die if we don't do that. So we have to have monogamy. Is it? People always give me this. Well, promiscuity is the natural way. Okay, monogamy is the natural. Okay, yeah, both. It just kind of depends on where that guy is and where that woman is at that time. Right. Do I want to breed with this guy, or do I want it's cads versus dads in that sense? But what because people are going to ask me this, so I might as well head you off at the pass here, which is they're going to say, well, today's women are like so much more promiscuous than men are. Yeah. Like if you go and you look at the general survey study, which keeps coming up, guys aren't having sex, but women are still having sex almost at the same rate as they've always been. They're not having sex with older guys. They're just having sex they're just sharing the hot alpha guy. That's essentially what they're doing. So women are promiscuous. Or you can say, well, what about women on OnlyFans? What about women on Instagram? What about pornography actresses? What about them? Are they invested in everyone that they have sex with? No, because they have to be conditioned past that natural innate instinct.
That's to a business, though.
Be invested in that. So it comes.
There's also model too. That's different.
The firmware is to be emotionally invested in who you're having sex with, but that firmware can be overridden by the software, which is it's just an act, which is just casual sex. This is all we're doing. It's sports fucking, right? We're just having it's an act is what it ends up being, and so you can condition. You can condition any animal, but you can condition human beings to get past innate revulsion to where the point where they eroticize things that should not even be. You're like, oh, I would never. That's your fetish. Ooh, how weird, right? Well, the reason why that seems weird to us is because we still have the natural revulsion to which that other person who gets off on whatever that is has pushed himself past. Anything can become normal, and anything can become a fetish.
Right. Well, I want to do a quick funny one, and then I want to get to something where Tate and I disagree, and I'm very curious to get your take on this because it does involve a component of parenting. I know you're a dad. He's not a dad as of yet, so it'll be an interesting parallel. But this is funny, and I actually had a friend send this to me, and it like irritated her in the worst way.
Oh, my favorite. I did a show with her too.
A friend of mine, no joke, sent this to me and was like, I can't stand this guy. How could he say this? And I looked. No joke, last night at the table at my husband, and I said, this is me. I do that. This is 100% true. So let's play it, Tyler.
I don't like traveling the world with women. I think it's one of the most frustrating.
I want to show you a side hustle.
We got hit with an ad.
Let it go through.
Here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, imagine you had to travel around the world and you had to take a 3-year-old with you. You'd be like, oh, now you go, where's my 3-year-old? Has it 8? I have to make sure they're safe. Got to bring all their stuff. It's exactly the same with a chick. Me and my brother, we're Spartan, right? We can just go, rock up at an airport. There's no flight for 11 hours. Sleep in the airport terminal. Don't eat. Don't sleep. One bag on our back. Old school soldiers. We don't care. With a chick, it's all, I need food. I need water. Where's my stuff? My case is 55 kilo. I forgot this foundation. I need to find this foundation.
And listen, I laughed, and I'm one of those people like who can own up to my own. That's me. Like I cannot just, I'm not spontaneous about things like that. I want my water. Not only do I want my water, it's got to be a certain type of water. I prepare my little food to take on the air. I mean, to go on a trip with me is annoying. I had my husband looking for gluten-free pasta in Italy is all I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. So you got to know yourself, right? But this is the type of thing that now immediately my friend zeroed in on, he's calling women children. I said, no, he's not. He's just using an example saying if you had a kid, if you had a woman, it's a very similar pattern. It's true. It's true. She couldn't get past that language, though. to being compared to a child and was triggered, and from there on in couldn't assess the reality, which is that she too needs a certain type of water to get on an airplane. It's just true.
It's just okay. So I have this is not in any book, by the way. I have an essay that really triggered a lot of women, but it's guys as well. I wrote this essay, and the title of the essay was "Never Take a Woman Fishing." And it's like very similar to this, is because a lot of guys, the reason why I wrote it was because a lot of guys that I knew at the time were trying to find some way to have to drag their girl into like their hobbies, right? Or to bring them all. Don't take a girl bowling, right? Whatever your thing is, unless she expresses an interest and actually fishing, you're not going to catch fish. You're not there to do the activity. You're there to introduce that girl to the activity that you love in the hopes that maybe she'll like to love it too. And then that's something you will have in common that you can do. You have to, like I said, this is like, you have to take a hands-off approach. If you like fishing, for example, that girl has to go, wow, I've always wanted to go fishing. Can I go fishing with you? Like if she's asking, then yeah, what I'm saying is like, don't drag her along to go fishing. And it's very similar to what he's saying right here. Now, the thing that I think a lot of people like sort of misinterpret is, because this is a hot take in the manosphere, the red pill, is that women are like children. And in a sense, they are. And not in the sense of like, oh, I got to coddle her and I got to do things for her. What it is in an evolutionary sense, because men have that protector instinct, because women are the as you said, you're very proud of the fact that you gave birth, right? I mean, that's the thing is like you're the incubator of the next generation. Mm-hmm. So in order for the human species to survive, for us to be the apex species on this planet, there has to be a dynamic between men and women where men instinctively want to protect women. That they want to put themselves in front of bullets in an active shooting situation, right? They instinctively want to provide, protect, and be parentally invested in, potentially anyways, be parentally invested in that woman. So what happens is women, being the vulnerable sex, have this sort of, for men, they look to women as something that they have to protect, almost in the same way that women have to protect children. So it goes men, women, children as far as the protection order goes. And so for women to get that protection from men that they have needed for, millennia, to get that, there has to be some sort of dynamic between the woman and the man. And so what happens is, I'm fragile, my kids are fragile, and I've got to have more babies because in our ancestral past, women had either one baby or they were about to have the next one. And so they are vulnerable to, the environment, to animals, to whatever else that's going on out there. There's starvation. That's the provisioning side of things. So women have to take on almost childlike aspect for men to want to protect that woman. And this is a very well studied. I can give you the research for it. But guys have this innate protector dynamic, or this psychology to want to protect women. When a woman cries, it's a much different dynamic than when a man cries. We go, man, the fuck up, stop being a pussy kind of thing. Whereas when a woman cries, we're like, what's wrong? Or if a baby cries, we're like, oh my God, something's wrong with the baby. There's a snake in the crib, right? We want to find out what's going on and solve the problem. Whereas for men, when they have like when men are emotional, we think of it as weakness. When women are, we want to protect. And that's why there's that sort of childlike dynamic between men and women.
I think the people who get triggered by something like that are deeply insecure. Is just because I'm not insecure, right? I'm not worried that, oh, he's calling me a child. I'm intellectually weak. I know I can sit and I can, go toe to toe with anyone, of any gender, and have a good debate. And I'm confident in my intellect and I'm confident in what I bring to the table. But I'm also willing to acknowledge that I'm like a small child on a trip. I am. So it's just a reality. So I think that the problem is that a lot of the people that get triggered by this content, be they men or be they women, are just deeply insecure. They feel very much threatened by messaging that, one, could be critical of them because they're not hardwired to handle criticism. And they're also threatened by messaging that calls them to be greater than they are, because it's hard, right? It's very, very hard to tell. If I'm sitting here and I'm saying to women, stop being promiscuous. It's not doing you any favors. I'm not saying that because I dislike women. I'm saying that because I love women and I know the beauty that it is to be a female that has that self-respect and what that brings to the table in terms of a dynamic between a relationship and a man and a woman and society at large. So it's coming from a good place. That doesn't mean you're going to receive it well, though, if you're deeply insecure and you've spent the last 3 weeks sleeping with a bunch of guys that don't mean anything and you're insecure about that decision. So I think that it's triggering people for the right reasons. They're uncomfortable with it, and the lash out is ban this guy, ban these people, shut them up. They're making me self-reflect on something that I know I'm doing that's not great. Whether it's about working out, getting to the gym, not being dependent on big pharma drugs, whatever it is, it's all problematic for the weak of mind. And that's where we are today, unfortunately. There's one area. Yeah, go ahead, Rolla.
Between emotionalism and empiricism.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
that's really what it boils down to. Let me this is actually I thought of this passage that I have. This is my 4th book. I'll just read. It's really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Every religion, social philosophy, or sexual strategy is grounded in working with these 2 instincts: the female instinct to submit and the male instinct to protect. Traditional conservatives, tradcons, is an attempt to maximize the male protective instinct through indoctrination and social learning for the benefit of women. Feminism is an attempt to minimize the female submissive instinct, also through social indoctrination, to enable women to more ruthlessly exploit the male protective instinct. The red pill is an attempt to teach men to selectively suppress the male protective instinct to avoid its exploitation by women who are conditioned not to be submissive through feminism or gynocentrism.